Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to Nerdfights! Step into the ring, it's time to brawl. Nerdfights, baby, we're geeking for all. Marvel, DC, Trek, and more. Fire. Pop culture battles, settle the score. Nerdfights, let's get loud. Nerdfights, yeah, for the geeky crowd. Nerdfights, hey, it's time to throw down. Bring your fandom, it's the hottest showdown. Who's got the takes? Who's got the heat? Mr. Know-It-All and Salty can't be beat. Introducing Gonzo, a nerdy delight. Comics knowledge, a geeky sage. Judging the battles, turning the page. That means only one thing. It's time to fight. Beat drops out with a final shot. Nerdfights. Let's fight!
So, in a nutshell, I think what we can all agree on is Andor looks really good, but nothing happens.
I'll tell you this for Andor for me is that since I only have like the synopsis and things like that going on for season 1, I like season 2. Nothing major's happening right now. It's all set up, and I like that though.
But the problem is we're halfway through it, and it's all set up.
We'll see. I mean,
maybe
Disney has Star Wars forever now, so.
Yes, and so far they've been doing such a bang out job with that, right?
Job. Yeah, I know. This is the only one that I've actually kind of enjoyed watching it, to be honest with you.
Well, you see, that's really bad.
Yeah, exactly. You could take that statement exactly how you took it, because that's what I meant.
Now, and I know Mr. Know-It-All, he posted a full-on review, so, you know, his opinions of it are pretty public knowledge.
Yeah.
And I get that. Here's my problem with his analysis, and I'm not trying to be mean to Mr. Know-It-All. I know he's being sincere with what he says, but a lot of his love of the show thus far is based on material that has nothing to do with the show. Like, he's talking about a massacre that's going to happen, but there's no indication of that in the show other than the fact that there are terrorists on the planet that are working against the Imperials on the planet and trying to, and they don't know that they have a sleeper agent that they've recruited. But as far as this, and only past there's only three. There's 3 atrocities that people can try to blame on the Empire in this. One is apparently some people got killed by Tarkin when he landed on this planet. However, if you listen to the dialogue, the reason those people are dead is the same reason that a protester who stands in the middle of the freeway is dead when they get run over by a car. It's because they were literally standing on the landing pad to try and stop the ship from landing, and they were unsuccessful. And so if you go to the airport and you stand on the runway and the 747 squashes you, that's not murder, in my opinion.
Or usually airplanes that are on the runway aren't coming to oppress your city either.
Well, but there's no oppression going on. That's okay. So that's atrocity number 1, atrocity in quotation marks. Atrocity number 2 is the surprise fun time that the Imperial officer tried to put on Bix in the 3rd episode. And I will fully admit that what he did was horrible and wrong. And obviously I'm not defending surprise fun time in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know. It sounds like you are.
Well, that's because you're a jerk. But but my thing about that one is that that's not the Empire being evil. That's a corrupt officer who's doing a bad thing. It's a person committing a crime. It's not the Empire endorsing oppression or something. It's you know what I'm saying there? Because there's no indication that what this guy did was like standard procedure or anything.
Are you talking? And you're still talking about the pilot that landed on those people?
No. Here I'm talking about the guy that attempted to accost Bix in episode 3.
Oh.
There's no indication that what he did was clearly wrong and evil, but there's no indication that was an imperial action. It was just a guy who happened to be working for the Empire doing a horrible thing. Do you see what I'm?
That's clear. That's. However, but I don't think that's what they were trying to go for anyway. So, I think.
But then we get into the big.
They were trying to go for, and because he was using the Empire as a tool to do what he's doing, just like cops do sometimes. You know, he used it as a badge of authority. That's all.
Right. But for example, if you have a cop that injures somebody, uses excessive force, does that mean that the police are oppressive, or does it mean a cop used excessive force?
No. I'm agreeing with that. That he is a bad apple.
Right.
He's just the bad apple.
Right.
I understand that.
So far we have just
hold on. I don't think even the story was implying that the Empire or the Imperial thing is bad because of what he was doing. He was
what I'm looking for, and you'll see this, my theme here, if you will, is I don't see anything in this show that indicates that the Empire is bad, objectively. See, I knew I was going to get there. Yeah,
you're such a dick.
I mean,
that's not an argument. Just because he's
listen. Just because you're a he, that doesn't mean there wasn't wrong.
I've never heard a dumber answer or reasoning in a long.
Well, hold on. So I said there were 3 things that you could accuse the Empire of. Number 1 was the landing on the protesters. However, I dare say that if a bunch of people were standing in the runway when Air Force One was coming in, Air Force One would squish those people. You don't block a high-ranking political official's ship from landing. You can't do that. Number 2
is that your position? Is that your position? I just want to make sure I understand.
Number 1 position,
because I do think you're absolutely time to have this conversation now. Now that I've managed to plug in a microphone, we need to.
Oh, you sound great. Okay.
Okay.
so you clean fix me. He doesn't want to.
No, I just
No.
Don't
answer him. Don't answer him.
No, he's just being. Which is literally what. That's up to see. The funny thing is, I can actually get real shitty when I'm not going through. All right, so we were to have. You want to have a real conversation? Let's have a real conversation. Oh, wow, that's your real
conversation.
Okay, all right.
And so,
Don, please, part the show.
Do you think then the way, just based on the way they described it in the
real quick, this is the biggest problem I've got. This is what set up rules. You try to run the table like you're the only person with an opinion. I'm sorry. The reason I even have a judge half the time is because all you try to do is try to talk through this thing as if somehow your answer is the only answer. Because here's the thing, you believe the right stuff. You're being obstinate about this entire topic because I'm sorry, literally they're talking about you have Krennic who's plotting to literally torture and destroy an entire planet.
But there's nothing that's categorically bad about, they're talking about fracking.
They're like, they're just only citizens. They're just only people.
So actually, let me talk about.
They're going to turn
Hold on.
into Krypton.
So let's
literally mine it.
let's
Explodes.
Okay.
But no, there's nothing bad.
Hold on. So
Propaganda arm who those 2 guys in the nice suits literally stand up in the middle of their meeting room and they sit here and go,
the best thing you were just talking about how all I want to do is run the table, and now you were doing.
Hold on.
I listened for.
You did have your fair time. Hold on.
15 minutes of you just sitting here talking about they don't.
I didn't get to my third point
because it's bull crap.
No, it absolutely is not.
I'm like, dude, literally.
Hold on. Time out. Let him get it. Let him get to his third one so that
fine.
He doesn't even try to interrupt.
Well, it's all right. Well, he's already gone on his tirade.
I don't care, but tell it to me.
All right. So, okay. So number one, like I said, you blocked a political ship from landing, and you got squashed from it.
Yeah, I got that part.
Number two, you had the attempted accosting of Bix, which was obviously a bad apple thing. Number three, and the worst thing that we saw, and this is the one thing you can confirm was imperial policy from the top,
Okay.
was they were enforcing immigration law. Now, and they weren't doing it in any way that seemed even the slightest bit out of order. They were going around checking a planet that had a problem.
Over little minute things.
That's exactly my point. Now,
But those weren't okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is those three are not even arguable because they were so minute. Those are not the things we would even use to say that the Empire was getting oppressed.
so in the
Okay, so you just made up.
well, wait. Let me address the one.
Hold on.
One. My thing is, if that's all you're going to do is focus on the first epirsode, on the first 3 episodes.
No,
I'm sorry. There's an entire storyline.
I'm trying to answer you, Jace. I'm trying to answer.
Answer anything. You just keep.
I'm trying to. Please let me answer. You brought up what Director Krennic was saying. Now, first of all, he didn't say, let's blow up the planet, which is the way.
He said, oh, no, I'm sorry. And the one guy said, what's the possibility? And the guy around the table says to him, no, listen, we know. Stop for a second. The guy around the table literally says to him, he goes, well, there's the possibility of complete destruction. Hold on. There's the possibility of complete destruction, to which Krennic goes, I mean, with this look of, but I'm sure that's hearsay.
Wait.
That's what he did, though.
Hold on. I am not suggesting
versus semantics.
I'm not suggesting Krennic is a good guy. First of all, don't get me wrong.
I thought the Republic's doing nothing wrong.
Hold on. I'm not. But first of all, he did state straight up that evacuation it would be a better alternative than to let these people die. He absolutely did.
What did his advisor say about statement?
What, that it might not be feasible, or I can't remember.
He goes, the people have too much pride, and chances are they won't want to leave on their own. Right. And he goes, well, I guess we'll just have to find an alternative then.
So there was a guy, hold on, true story. This is an absolutely true story.
Going up the planet.
You hold on. You guys might be a little too young or in the wrong part of the country to know this story, but absolutely real
freedom part of the country, yeah.
Anyway, there was a man named Harry Truman, not the former president, just a guy whose name happened to be the same as the former president, and he lived on the base of Mount St. Helens. And he grew up there in a cabin. He lived there his whole life. And when 1980 was rolling around and everybody was saying Mount St. Helens is going to explode, his answer was, this is my mountain. I live on this mountain. I ain't leaving. And they begged him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. Now, when the mountain exploded, he ended up buried under several billion tons of mountain.
Yes, I got that part. Yes.
Right. And so let me ask you then, and comparing it to what, granted, I'm not saying Krennic, nice guy. He's a dick. But is he wrong if they say, well, we want to evacuate these people? Well, they're not going to leave. Well, then what are we going to do?
Okay,
how about you don't?
Hold on. The difference between those hero analogies that you gave him.
Why am I here?
Gave us, huh?
Why am I here?
Because I said I wanted to answer him real quick.
The thing is, it's literally been the two of you talking for the last 20 minutes. I tried to interject at some point, and I'm just saying.
No, go ahead. I'm just.
Because he hasn't made his third point. He's been sitting here jabbering about the whole thing.
Or he did.
I did.
What was it? What was the third point?
It was the illegal immigration thing.
Oh, God.
That's why
it's supposed to be okay. So we're talking about Krennic right now because that was your first point as far as what you think.
No, I was because you're sitting here saying having the gall to anything resembling a straight face. Oh, well, there's no empirical evidence of them doing wrong. I don't know about you, sir, but when you plot the destruction of a planet, because the second that came into play, good people would go, well, then maybe we don't need the thing. Okay. But he's like, no, because clearly the Emperor needs it for his energy project, which we out of universe know is the Death Star. Remember, they're not doing anything wrong, though. I mean, bro, right now,
hold on. I want to piggyback off of that too. Mm-hmm. I want to piggyback off of that. Also, the analogy you used, we did beg him to get off the mountain. The Empire did not even attempt to tell them to leave.
Not yet. We don't know what's going to happen. So, just to be fair,
let's not pretend like we know the new both and the Empire Strikes Back.
No thing that's going to happen. They built an armory, which was promised that they wouldn't do. So now they've systematically done a thing. Because, by the way, the protesters that you're talking about, who were there and they didn't want to get out of the way, that's why they got squashed. Yeah, no, Tarkin said they literally tell the story. I don't know why you're being obtuse. They tell the literal story that Tarkin decided he was going to land there no matter what. Tarkin didn't care that the people were there. Tarkin was just like, I don't give a damn, I'll land right there. Smack there. Boom. And crushed them. So it's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of, if you go back in biblical times, so we'll go to context that I know you do know. We'll go to, if you remember at the time, Pilate, the reason Pilate was allowed or was taking such great cares when it came to the situation with Jesus is because they had just they had the Maccabee uprising, and after that, Pilate himself had several issues, and to the point that Caesar was like, if you have problems one more time, I'm going to get rid of you, and by get rid of you, he didn't mean fire him. Right. So he's essentially in that scenario, in that this whole culture, the Gormans, whether or not they're pompous, whether they're haughty, whether they're whatever, they're absolutely at the end of their particular rope. That's why when you get to Cassian showing up to take a look around, he's like, you guys aren't ready, you're this and that. Because Cassian's thinking long, like they're still playing a long game. These people are at the end. He's like, I thought you were revolutionary.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, these people are ready. They are done. So fed up. That's the boiling pot. And then now here's something I will totally hand you on a silver platter. Then you have Lucian, who's sitting here going, well, then, and the guy, he says, what they're going to burn. And he goes, and they will burn brightly.
Yeah.
Because he knows
so how is Lucian any better?
Lucian's not supposed to be better. Lucian's trying to use these harsh tactics in order to shine, to make the people see. Because unfortunately, when a frog is stuck in boiling water and you slowly turn it hot, they don't try to get out. They get comfortable.
I know the slow cooking now. In fact, I've seen it at work with my aunt, who was a chef. She showed me how to properly cook a lobster without having the lobster try to get out of the pot.
Exactly.
But and I don't know why people always use a frog. It's a lobster. That's what it's supposed to be. It's a lobster.
Hey, man. Anyway. When you're from Louisiana, man.
It's true. I'm not from Louisiana, but I know exactly what he's talking about.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
No, his son.
Because you eat frog. Okay. Yeah. So you're French. That explains a lot. That explains it. So, all right. So, but
my big issue. I'm not real quick though. I need to understand. I need to make it clear. I'm not trying to have the argument about whether or not the veracity of the show at this point. What I'm trying to find out, you and I have always argued about specifically, is you believe, and I want to kind of get back to this. Cause I was trying to explain it to Gonzo. You have this. You have a belief, and I'm not going to be crappy about it. I'm being very respectful and representing it.
No, it's all right.
That starting at, and I do understand where you're coming from. Starting at like Rian Johnson's Last Jedi movie, there's been this on an institutional level when it comes to Disney effort to deconstruct everything that we as Star Wars fans would say is good about the franchise in terms of, well, maybe the Jedi didn't have the best intentions, and maybe the Sith actually are misunderstood, or maybe the Empire, blah, blah. And I do get that. But my contention is not necessarily, and there may, no, I'm willing to concede There might even be a measure of that in Andor. However, it is definitely not to the extremity of The Last Jedi, and it's definitely not the extremity of, say, The Acolyte. For me, I don't have a problem with putting a face on the Empire. I don't have a problem showing I don't personally. But I do understand where the issue comes from, of showing, hey, you know what? The initial insurgency was messy. Because you got to remember, once they got past this, once it was a thing, everything fell rank and file. You had your generals, you had your officers, you had your people, and then it suddenly became a thing. But until that point, they were us in the Revolutionary War before George Washington showed up. Like, we were just.
Well, I would say this,
fight.
So as far as there's a couple of problems, and this is something that bothers me about when Star Wars tries to get serious. I don't think Star Wars should try to get serious, and that's the fundamental flaw with Andor. I think is that it's trying to be a little too straight, as opposed to the fantasy space opera, which is its roots. Because even the funny thing about it is that, yes, I admit that I go a little on the hyperbole side with some of this. However, you can make the case that throughout the saga this is true, because George Lucas, as you saw in that video clip that I sent you, flat out said it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't see a problem. What is the problem with that, though?
The problem with that is that by
the way, just in case Gonzo doesn't know what we're talking about, George Lucas, have you seen the clip?
I thought I put it in the group. George Lucas basically said that the rebellion was the Viet Cong.
Like when he was writing them, he used that as his model for writing how the rebellion's tactics and what they were, which
would make the Empire, by the way, us.
Well, and again, here's the other thing. Speaking as a writer, and you are a writer too, okay? I've used all kinds of things as example for, and you kind of model structurally stuff around. Like trying to sit here and say, okay, what is it? Who can I think of that is close enough to like the way I want this thing to be? And then you find someone, and it has nothing to do with good or bad, right or wrong, and just say, okay, this is what they are.
Sure, I get that.
Space Nazis is just the best, quote unquote, example or template that everybody goes to. Right.
But, well, yeah, and the thing is, the Empire clearly...
Truthfully, Space Stalin was probably a closer... Because they just the Empire's just throwing bodies at stuff all the time, and Stalin did a lot more of that.
Yeah,
well, the problem is that starting with the prequels, it was lighter in the prequels compared to later Disney era stuff. But starting in the prequels and moving forward, as they were trying to insert more and more politics into it, what George Lucas was trying to do with the prequels, and he said this in interviews, I've seen it, is that he was trying to basically make the Emperor George W. Bush. He absolutely believed that George W. Bush was evil, and the Emperor is the way he saw that. And so I know that's I'm not agreeing with him, obviously.
Oh, no, I get it.
But this is unfortunately some of the very unfortunate
about
groups.
Well, are you sure about that?
Am I sure what that I?
Because I'm a liberal and I forgot. No, I just sorry. I keep forgetting I'm a flaming liberal.
It's the long hair,
right? That's what makes me
That's the ticket.
Hold on, let me grab some
weed and have a tree.
Hold on, with your electric car.
Yeah.
Do I have an electric car? Oh, jeez. I am the liberal. Oh, man. It's sense.
So, Victor Giovanni had said, when he were talking through he commented on the thing. One of the things he mentioned that I thought was interesting was he felt like Andor is he goes, Andor's the mature Star Wars we don't deserve. And by that, I mean, when the first Star Wars movie, Star Wars was very much, it was what it was, fantasy, entertaining, the whole 9 yards.
Yes.
Then they brought in the second movie with a new director who had a new vision, a different vision. It took a darker tone, a slightly more elevated, grown-up tone. Not that that's better, but it's just what it was. And then George was like, this is not what I want at all. I don't want this. And so he pulled it back, and we got Ewoks, and there was a little over compensation.
Well, first of all, George the more I hear from George, the less I respect the man.
You realize he's like the upster child for old Hollywood Marxism. But it just here's
I'm getting to really hate the guy. I don't like saying that because I love. It's kind of like George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry.
yeah.
They should have gotten married. They should have had that should have been the first. The first illegal gay marriage should have been George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry. And as a flaming liberal, I would have presided over the ceremony.
I believe it 100%.
But like listening to him, you know what? I saw this one interview, and it was a very recent interview. I don't know who he was talking to exactly because someone just took the clip out of context. But he was very, very old, so it looked like it was like, probably this year, and he was talking about how horrible Hollywood has become because they're just recycling old ideas and also making sequels. And then I was like, what is your entire career based on? Oh, yeah, you wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie. You couldn't get the rights, so you just made the Flash Gordon movie and called it Star Wars.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what's his face just did. What Ryan Coogler did with Sinners. He went and pitched a Blade story, and they were like, no.
And so he's like, okay, well, I'll get the other guy from Black Panther, and we'll do it ourselves, But and by the way, Sinners was a great movie if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely amazing movie.
Yeah, but so when he says that, it's like, dude, you are a total hypocrite saying that because you did exactly that and made billions doing it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. And the funny thing is then he'll talk about the evils of capitalism. Okay, then why don't you shoot me just 20 million? That's all. Just send me $20 million. I'll pay off all my debts and make an independent movie studio. And I'll even call it the real Lucasfilm. And I'll make nothing but communist propaganda movies for it.
All right, guys.
Oh, wait, they already have them. They're called Star.
Hold on. A little off topic here. Now, it went from Andor to freaking George Lucas.
I know. So, but the point of all this is that the seeds of all this have been in Star Wars all along. And so I'm actually working on, and it's going to take some time. I'm sorry.
Are you doing the thing?
I'm going to do a full-on.
I knew it. You talked about doing it.
We are going to do a massive documentary. I may actually ask you to do some voiceover for it.
I'm down.
Okay. Even though you may disagree with some of it, you'll still do it?
Oh, no, of course.
Okay,
Of course.
Yeah, no, super. What if these guys voice to somebody else, so they won't yell?
Right, I totally do.
But yeah, an absolute full-on documentary showing how all along how evil the Jedi are, and that the Jedi are actually we always think the Sith are evil, but that was the big lie.
You said that,
But okay, so you haven't heard that, Mr.
Probably one of those aliens History Channel.
No. Here's the beauty
documentaries.
It's all there. Okay, let's just Gonzo. Let's just focus on A New Hope. I hate calling it that, but that's
what it is.
Yeah. So in A New Hope, does Obi-Wan ever tell Luke the truth?
Gosh, it's been so long. Probably.
Okay, so let me
explain. No.
Hold on.
Yeah, thinking about it. No, I would say I want to say no. I think he did. He alluded to the truth, but not really.
He flavored in half truths.
On a need to know basis.
For example, he called Anakin his good friend. Now, go back and look at the prequels. Were those good friends?
No, man. Those were
brothers. Now, but yeah, well, they fought like brothers for sure. Him and I hate him. He's holding me back. He says Anakin was a good friend.
Another thing.
Hold on. He betrayed and murdered your father. straight up lie. Don't tell me it depends on your point of view crap. That is a straight up lie to see. If I say, Gonzo, I know you always wonder what happened to your dad. There's, President Trump murdered your father. And then you go, what? And you go to the White House and Trump's like, no, I am your father. And then you come back to me and you're like, well, it's true from a certain point of view because he ceased being Joe Bob Schmobo and became Donald Trump. And so he murdered your father.
Okay, we hang on. Time out. I have a real quick thought. Nothing about literally what you're saying, except about what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I understand. Well, because I'm not addressing it, but I'm kind of addressing.
I know I'm going too roundabout, but
no. My question is this: what? So what? Because here's the thing: at some point or another, you keep doing this devil's advocate thing, and it stops. It's like someone who does a joke to be ironic. Like for years, I would say, "Well, that's groovy to be ironic." Pretty soon, I just started calling things groovy.
Yeah,
I literally, I stopped. It stopped being ironic and started just being a thing that I say. So my thing is, you're having at some point, like, which way did you want it? Do you want it the lighthearted? Do you want it lighthearted, positive?
I do, but it's never going back there.
But then you clearly don't, though, because at the same time,
that's not the question. Then the question is, what do you want?
What I would want would be for Star Wars to be more like freaking Star Wars, just like I want Star Trek to be like Star Trek.
Hold on, stop doing that. What does that mean?
That was very. What does that loaded?
It means to look at George Lucas aside, because creators can create, just like with Gene Roddenberry, and create something that's bigger than them. And if you look at the original trilogy of Star Wars, in isolation, forgetting about all the other content that's come since then, is a trilogy of your classic good versus evil paradigm. It is, it's Gandalf and the Balrog. There is no question of who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. Right? There's no layers of subtlety about it. That's why we call it a space opera. We call it that for a reason. It's not because they sing songs. It's because everything is put out there for you to see. Here are the bad guys. Here are the good guys. The bad guys want to destroy the years.
Yeah. I have a clarifying question. So then what you're trying to say then is you don't like the gray areas that's happening right now.
Correct. I think that the grayness of Star Wars, which started a long time ago, but has been accelerating recently, is
my thing. Is it has maybe because they're trying to delve into how the rebellion became the Rebel Alliance in the first place. They're not going to be. It's not going to be all rainbows and unicorns.
No, but here's
hold on. Hold on. And so I think with Andor, I think that they're really showing that part because we're Americans, we're the greatest country in the world currently, but that doesn't mean we don't have blemishes and there's no gray areas. And so I think that's what they're just delving into right now. And so obviously at the end of it all, like I want to say from, New Hope to the Return of the Jedi, because I can't stand anything after that, is that, it did give out the black and whites, but it's trying to show you how they got there.
Okay. But here's where I told this to Mr. Know-It-All, and I think it's a fair point.
I think you're just arguing because you just like to argue.
I do like to argue, but I'm not.
But if it's told truth, why are you arguing?
Huh? Because I believe that I'm telling the truth on this. I think that what we're seeing is so what you were talking about. Okay, we want to see that you're right that if you're going to show the rise of the rebellion, there's going to be some dirty deeds in there. Okay, sure. I can totally get behind that. But you know what you're not doing? Hold on, and
just do what you talking.
Tell them what you told me. Tell them. That's what I'm about to. I'm trying to. Okay. What you have to do is to show the evil, the absolute oppressive evil of the Empire that would cause good people to do dirty things. That's what we're not seeing. We're seeing a wonderful utopian society and some asshole going, let's blow the militaries. Let's you can bleep me on that. Let's bomb a military base. Let's and let civilians die in revolts so that we can recruit people to our cause. But we're not seeing why this cause is so important. We're just hearing people talk about the oppression of the Empire.
Yes, hold on a second there. And I can agree to that, but that has something to do with the writing.
Well, yeah,
they're just failing. Yeah, they're failing to show the evil side of the Empire. It's, if I'm using what your thought process,
and you show that there are good people.
There obviously there are oppressive things, and they're listening to. Go ahead.
They took a step back. So what I mean that I believe what you're talking about is kind of where we're going, but because at the end of the day, we're going to get that. We're going to get there. But I feel like I'm kind of with you in that they were already doing some things. They were already doing. To mention the fact that, remember, when there's a lot of people who knew the truth. Amidala wasn't the only one who knew the truth when it dies to thunderous applause and all that other garbage.
Right.
Okay. There are people who know. That's one of the reasons why Mon Mothma has been involved from the beginning, is because she realizes. But now she was hoping all she had to do was bankroll it, and she would never have to actually physically get involved. Then when the severity got more work.
But you know what we needed to see? We needed to see what Mon Mothma saw. We needed to see, because we don't know, we just hear people say that the Empire is oppressive, but everything we see in society is the opposite of that.
Well, they've given examples when you're listening to them speak.
Yeah, but we're not, you know what?
Well, yeah, you're not seeing it. Okay, but again, I'm agreeing with you in that one. That's a flaw in the writing, is what I'm trying to say.
But it's just like,
is that I think what they're doing is trying to rely on that the Empire in the future movies is just bad. And that these are just bad, and yes, maybe they need to emphasize on the oppression and the reasons why these rebels are being the way they are. And they're doing the best that they can, quote unquote. I doubt it.
But
however, what they're trying to do is by doing it with just telling us little expositions here and there.
But the problem is, if the Empire is not shown to be evil first, then that means that remember what I argue about Andor season 1 is that the only reason the Empire turns dark is because of the terrorist activities of the so-called rebellion. Now,
but I would argue, wouldn't that be the fundamental reason why it's bad, though? Too. Let's say I'm willing to go with you. Let's say that's exactly how it went down.
All right.
I'm sorry. There's been plenty of governments who've had terrorist attacks happen to them and didn't turn evil and oppressive.
But here's the problem. Like, what happened after 9/11? You guys were around,
of course. I'm from New York.
Do you remember traveling before 9/11 compared to after?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now there are people out there. I disagree with them, of course. There are people out there that consider that oppression, right? Because now travel, even to this day, people that are under the age of 30 have no idea what travel was like, where you could just literally walk to the gate with your friends as they're getting onto the airplane, and there was no metal detector or anything.
Well, no, I think there was. You still had to put your purse through a thing, but it was like basic. It was very basic stuff.
Very basic.
Yeah.
Or you walk through a metal detector, and they were like, "Oh yeah, whoop, 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 cool, come back, I'll see you later."
Yeah. It's extremely simple, and in fact. Yeah, a lot of times, like I remember when I was a kid, I would set it off because I'd have like a metal belt buckle or something.
Well, that's
by the way, with Darth Vader had belt buckle.
Big biplanes like they had in like the Phantom. You know what I'm saying? The kind that landed on water. That's those really, really old ones. You probably will suit and everything to get on the plane.
Oh yeah, bow tie and a little square hat with a tassel on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have to get on the plane with the step ladders, not the At the hour for the runaway.
Is there?
Well, actually, if you were really lucky as a kid, you got to be the one to go out in front and pull the propeller to start.
I love you so much. That's the best. Oh my god.
But yeah,
I think we're in agreement there though on how they're portraying the Empire.
well, wait, hold on. Let me finish my train of thought here real quick.
Do we have that much time?
1 hour later.
You should absolutely put that in right there, and like a SpongeBob transition.
Absolutely.
So in conclusion, what I'm saying is
Like a pastor saying conclusion. That's another half an hour.
yes, right on. Imagine if after 9/11 there were more terrorist attacks within the country that weren't just airplanes, that were interstate commerce based, that were infrastructure.
The Boston Marathon.
Well,
The Boston Marathon, yeah.
but that was a lot later, and most people think of that as an isolated incident. Because it's like one rogue guy that literally made a bomb out of a
I was
I know, but you know what I'm saying. As I'm talking about well-organized, well-funded, well-armed terrorists blowing up government facilities, blowing up bridges, doing stuff like that to purposely disrupt the government functions. I mean, think about it. The big heist in the first season of Andor was literally stealing the payroll for an entire sector, right? So
if you're going to use that example, right?
rob Fort Knox,
No, you're saying organize and things.
or did they do that already? I don't.
They okay. Even if you label them terrorists, those were each isolated incidences.
But the difference is that this and in fact that's where you get to the story.
We're so disorganized right now.
When you get to the story of Butch Lady and Bottom Boy, sorry, I can't remember their names. So that's their name.
Cedra.
Yeah.
By the way,
Her whole thing.
did you know the internet lost its mind when people were trying to make that? Because I made that comparison in a chat and got so lambasted.
Oh, what?
They were like, the creators have said she's not a dominatrix. And I'm like, bro, she's a
She
top
is the
obey.
definition of a dominatrix.
I don't care if she wears black leather or not, or if there's a crop in that bedroom or not. She's a top, he's a bottom, and it is that way.
Yeah. Oh, I guarantee you she has a strap on.
Yeah, they're like, all right, good night, everybody. We're done. Show that.
So
Oh my god!
it's a big one too. I will tell you.
Oh no! Hey, whoa, hey, easy there.
Cyril's like on the phone. Oh, hi, Mom. How you doing? Oh, so, anyway, but
Dear God.
no, but if those kind of attacks were continuing within the borders of the U.S., any president, I don't care, Republican, Democrat, doesn't really matter, is going to have to do something to curtail it continuing. That would probably mean some kind of Marshall Plan. And
when there is clear,
that's why we have the Marshall Plan, by the way.
when there are forces at work that come in, eventually someone, especially if it becomes overwhelming, has to just draw a line and then start expelling the troublemakers and rebel.
Will you stop trying to turn this into a discussion? I did not mention Trump except for as a joke about his dad. So
no, but it's right, because they clearly are doing that with the whole. Because that was immediately the vibe I got when the whole
except
their passports thing and everything. And like,
there's no way because
this had been they really afraid of documented.
Yes,
show.
but the thing is that this was filmed before Trump took office.
But the sentiments are still there. Everybody knew what it stands for.
Right.
But hard to predict that when especially when you come back. So I mean, clearly they were right.
Well, except the ironic thing is that the Empire's being way nicer about it. So but imagine so. Imagine if you look at what Butch Lady was talking about, is she discovered her whole thing in season 1 was she discovered that they're secretly getting equipment from here and equipment from here, and they're building up a serious force. And then they start using that military might that they've collected on the side. But what I want to see is what drove Saw Gerrera to be the radical that he is. We don't see that. We just see Saw Gerrera as a radical. Why is Luthen so dedicated to the cause? What horrors did he see? We should have seen that in episode 1 of Andor, rather than maybe they'll hint at it at the end of the season.
No. You want to know what I think is going to happen? They're going to say that those two characters, I don't think they saw anything. Maybe it's a lie. Maybe Saw it. Maybe Saw because he's further out on the rims. But here's the thing. I firmly believe these are just the conspiracy theorists who sort of see the writing on the wall in terms of what this kind of a. But the other part is, see, this is where for me the allegory falls apart. This is where the allegory falls apart because they've lived in a perfect utopian republic for over 1,000 years. That means anybody who could ever know of what an oppressive government or structure looks like is long gone and hasn't seen one. Right. So for them to sit here and try to act, so they're to me, it's funny now that we're talking this through. You're right in that the only way this should have gone down, instead of them trying to give us, frankly, what some of our peers call the message and tell us how things are supposed to go. The truth is, it should have been what you described. They should have showed us, because that should have been the moment people were like, right, this is not how you're supposed to treat people. You have to get this.
Well, this is the part that we all agree on, is that they're not doing a good job on showing how bad the Empire is bad.
Right.
I think it's because they're leaning too much on the past movies.
Right. But the problem is
being lazy about it.
Except for the prequels, the past movies aren't in the past at all. And
I mean, literally. I
know. I agree. They're just counting on the fact
the writers and the showrunners are leaning on that, hoping that because they're the Empire, they're going to be bad, and so instead of actually writing the thing out, right, they're being freaking lazy, right, and saying, "Oh, they know the Empire's bad." Well, and this is what we get out of a result of it.
Right. And this is where, like, going back to the documentary thing that I was talking about, if you look at the prequels especially, you can find quote after quote after quote of Palpatine and Anakin and everybody else that is supposedly these evil people talking about how much they want peace. You know what you hear from the Jedi? Go kill this guy. Go kill that guy. That you don't hear them talking about peace. You hear about them.
You don't send them to kill.
They absolutely do.
They go to negotiate.
In fact, remember Yoda and Obi-Wan having the conversation. Don't send me to kill Anakin. Send me to kill the Emperor. And then Yoda's like, no, you're not strong enough for him. You must go. So he literally is on a kill mission against his former Padawan.
Yeah,
and then go to classic Star Wars. I can't kill my own father. Well, then the Emperor has already won. Talk about passive aggressive. He's a freaking ghost and he's doing it.
The Emperor has already won.
I guess you don't give a crap about us, do you, boy?
Smarmy is the fun, right? Jeez Louise.
That was a good one.
But am I wrong? I mean, that's the problem. And then as far as this is some funny stuff that I think you can throw in, is him going, Luke, look at these blast points. Sand people couldn't have done those. Oh, only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise. Then immediately you cut to Mandalorian, where the 2 scout troopers are trying to shoot the tin can and can't hit it because their suck so bad. Right? And then it's like, okay, so who really killed Owen and Beru? Was it actually, and here's my theory, Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan killed Owen and Beru in order to groom Luke to joining the Jedi against the good Sith?
Wow, that's a large.
There's no evidence whatsoever that the stormtroopers did.
There's no evidence that Obi-Wan did either.
Obi-Wan had motive. The stormtroopers did. The stormtroopers would have no. Right. But it's circumstantial evidence, and as Harry Lutz would say, that's kinds of evidence.
Was hilarious. Oh my god!
But the it's absolutely the circumstantial evidence is that Obi-Wan had motive and opportunity. Whereas that's to Pring. She hears somebody coming home, and so she's excited. But yes, to Pring, I know. Well, you sound like a puppy at a pound. Really? Okay. But anyway, so if Obi-Wan was the one who would benefit from Luke coming with him, and notice. What does he do when Obi-Wan uses the Jedi mind trick? He looks really intense and he speaks in a very direct way, right? You don't need to see as I do. Okay, now come with me to Alderaan. Learn the ways of the Force, Luke.
All right.
Okay, you're a bad.
Go ahead, Mr. Know-it-all.
The problem is he knows it.
I feel like this is I feel like this is all circumstantial.
It is.
And I feel like
That is kinds of evidence.
Not enough to die on a hill with.
No, but when you combine that with the fact that you have the Jedi sending people on kill missions and the Sith seeking peace, you have a terrorist organization that we see hacking a government that is, by the way, the rightful government. All of Palpatine's powers, while you may say are unfair, were legitimately given to him by the Senate, and so all of that is he is the legitimate emperor of the empire.
Okay, hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Know-it-all.
he's the legitimate. I want to repeat that. I like to repeat. I wish the court reporter could read it back. He's the legitimate emperor of what was the Republic.
Yeah, which he reorganized.
He has reorganized and wrested power from.
He did not wrest power. He was given special powers by the Senate.
Emergency. That was not the power to.
And the emergency wasn't over. It would almost be
over.
And I know it would almost be like if the president of the United States tried to say that an illegal immigrant constituted an invasion.
No, the 2.7 million constitute.
No, because he was talking specifically about one particular gang which doesn't have 1 million people.
Semantics.
Oh, that's not semantics.
That is, bro.
You can't argue that that's all declared war.
You're picking. I don't know what you were.
I'm just saying that I think that the emperor was given the power by the Senate to reorganize the government in the way that he did. He did not do anything illegally. And you can
it doesn't sound like Star Wars is the ones with a problem defending the Empire. It sounds an awful lot like you are, sir. Just
so listen here. So also you said legally, so he used an amoral tool to do evil things with. An amoral.
Well, what did he do? Okay, if you look at his goal, assuming that everybody is speaking the truth from their various perspectives, right? So the Emperor's perspective that he has said repeatedly in the original trilogy and in the prequel trilogy is his goal is peace throughout the galaxy.
I mean, Thanos wanted peace throughout.
No, Thanos wanted resources.
He wanted to.
He didn't say anything about peace. He just wanted
but I mean, yeah, he wanted. He didn't. He saw that the resources were dwindling, and he found a solution.
And he had, but Thanos was also an idiot because he had an infinity gauntlet that could have doubled the resources rather than half the people. But, whatever.
Exactly. I mean, but see, his point of view was,
Well, Thanos was not evil in his own mind, of course. And that's what made Thanos a good villain.
like Sith didn't think they were evil,
Well, except that the Sith weren't
or
going
I
on.
would say Palpatine.
Well, Palpatine was one of the two main Sith, right?
Right.
But the Sith were not going on kill missions. You could argue that Darth Maul was, except that, was Darth Maul sent to? It's never explicitly said that he's going to go kill them, only that he's going to confront them. But
Again, that's semantic. That's cherry picking.
no, well, I'm just saying.
Listen. We knew
In court, you have to. There's a difference between going to stop someone going to
they're
kill
talking to each other. We're not in court. They're talking to each
But
other.
if you
just take care of the situation, he knows what the hell that meant.
how do you that sir is oh gosh, it's not hearsay, it's speculation, because you don't know what you don't know. I'm just saying. Right. Well, you just said we know.
Mr. Palpatine and Maul there, they've known each other for quite some time, and I think Maul knew what he meant.
Actually, we don't even know how long they've known each other at that point.
Enough to be his Padawan, or his
his apprentice. That's what the Sith is, an apprentice.
Yes, exactly.
Or an acolyte.
Lord thing.
If it all would have been better if only Palpatine was a lesbian space
or semantics. That's what you were doing.
No, I think that the problem is that it's I think that the certain point of view thing ruins it for Obi-Wan, because you can't. The truth is not subjective either.
No, but we as people always try to protect one another. We try to protect from harsh truths. We try to protect each other when we know we shouldn't, or we try to think we know better than what people need to know or not know. And I feel like there's, with the exception of the fact things like, well, never mind. I'm getting into splitting here.
And then technically, Darth Vader did kill Anakin.
That's the other thing is I thought you liked the good versus evil, the romance of.
I do.
And so
but we can't have it both ways. That's the problem. Is either it's the good, because like one thing that was paramount in the original trilogy and is now completely forgotten is the idea that if you're a Jedi and you do an evil act, you're done. Right? Remember, the Luke almost lost it just because he was trying to justifiably kill the Emperor, but he was not supposed to do that. He was supposed to kill his dad for some reason, but he wasn't supposed to kill the Emperor because the Emperor was trying to goad him with hatred, and hatred apparently leads to the dark side. But when we get to the prequels and the sequels, we more and more see that the Jedi act out of malice. The Jedi act, in fact, Rey is a straight up hate monger.
We won't talk about Rey. Rey's the unpeople, the unmixed.
Canon is canon, buddy. I don't like it. I don't like it either, but
that's not canon. I refuse.
But I'm just saying,
whatever you say from this to that point concerning that is null and void. It's not even an argument.
Wow. So just because you don't like the movies, you're going to say that they don't count?
Dude, the whole story is not even canon. Come on.
It is canon.
Why? Because they said so? Because they made movies?
Yes. Because do you know who gets suicide canon? Luke is
absolutely not.
Yes, absolutely. Luke is
the acolyte. The acolyte's canon now?
Sadly, yes.
No.
That's how it works. Just like Star Trek Discovery is canon in the Trek universe, as much as I hate it. Right.
Well, that gets you ostracized with some communities.
Yeah, I know.
Apparently, the canonicity or not has to do with copyright law. So there are fascinating things happening in Star Trek.
Yeah, but the thing is that
it doesn't count. I don't care what you say. It doesn't count. Don't bring.
Well, the thing is,
you're allowed to have that. We're allowed to have your head canon all you want. Guess what?
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, Independence Day is a wonderful singular movie.
Oh yeah,
never another one. Okay, as far as I'm you just erase. Indiana Jones is a wonderful trilogy. It is an excellent trilogy.
Anything after that doesn't exist, man.
Yeah, it's an okay trilogy. It's an outstanding movie, and and it had a decent sequel and an outstanding threequel.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but and then there were no other Indiana
So
Jones.
the point is, yes, the point is there nothing exists after that.
Okay, so the Mandalorian doesn't exist. Clone Wars don't exist. The Rebels.
We've been here for about an hour, so maybe we should start letting it.
Okay, so
Anyways, at the end of it all, I am liking how it's showing the gray areas for the rebels. It kind of just reminds me of how all the disorganization, how the different sects of the rebels are just still disorganized, and I look forward to seeing them come together as an alliance. I agree with you as far as showing how bad the Empire is. I mean, we know how bad the Empire is, at least I do, because of the future, quote unquote, things that's happened, however,
a long time ago.
they're not doing a good, they could do a better job in portraying the Empire as worse. But again, I'm enjoying, I think, and I do like that it's a little bit more mature. They need something.
There are some aspects of Andor. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Andor is all bad. There are some aspects of it that I think are real. I think from a production design, it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm not going to hear. The acting is great.
It is pretty immersive.
I don't like, and I get why they're doing it, because basically, unfortunately, it's a money pit for Disney. And so I get why they're doing it, but unfortunately, these time jumps are just too jarring, I think, because like when we go to another year later, even though they just say 1 year later again, which is stupid, because when they say 1 year later again, I'm like, wait a minute. So
that was the first episode.
I was like, is it still 1 year later, or is it another year later?
Yeah.
1 year later from the last episode. I get it, but at the same time, I'm looking.
Totally losing.
Yeah. But they should have said 2 years later or another year later. But at any rate,
go ahead. But you like it?
But then we wake up with Andor in bed with Bix, and I'm like, wait, when did this happen?
That she was his girlfriend at the very first.
But they were kind of. I mean, like, because at the last episode, she was recovering from the trauma of what happened to her, and then all of a sudden, the next thing we see is they're just lying in bed together and they're super happy.
The same thing with America and the widow.
Hold on. She was.
Well, we find out over time that she's not. But like when they wake up, they're like, "Oh, it's good to see you." Blah blah blah. And it's like,
she woke up from a nightmare.
I felt like I missed a bunch of storytelling.
You did. It's because they're only giving us 3-hour movies. We're seeing all this, but here's what you got to understand. We're seeing movies. We're seeing a movie, and then a movie, and then a movie. It's a 3-hour movie.
But you know what? Then that makes it worse. Because that means that Cassian Andor's entire plot in a 3-hour movie was he steals a TIE fighter and hooks up with his old girlfriend.
You're absolutely right, because and similarly, that's like this one crew, we're seeing their one day in this one movie on this one ship. That's the nature of telling stories. You pick a snapshot at time. Don't act like you have to suddenly sit here and be like, why aren't you giving me the whole thing? Blah, 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 blah. At the end,
I'm saying that if you're going to make a cohesive, and you know this, if you're going to make a cohesive film, if the goal is, and I'm all for this, by the way, if they want to say, okay, we're going to make 4 movies, each movie represents 1 year building up to the Battle of Yavin.
That's a lot, though.
Well, I know, but if that's what and I understand, they wanted to do 4 seasons, but they couldn't get the money from Disney to do that, and I get that, but so if they're going to do 4 movies leading up to that, fine, groovy, as you would say, but then each movie, the characters have to have an arc. If the show is called Andor, then Andor needs to have an arc in each of these movies. I'm just saying. If you want to call it the rise of the rebellion, and so then in one movie you can completely sideline Andor to have him hanging out with the gang of misfit toys on toy island with Santa.
Right.
You know, that's perfectly fine if the show is called The Rise of the Rebellion, but it's not. It's called Andor. So Andor should be at the center of each of these stories and growing as a character as we progress from movie 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. But we're
So what would you rate it then from episodes 1 through 6?
Man, if
So
these
far,
are
just so far,
well, no, but if these are individual movies, I would rate them very low. As a series, I have to see if it's going somewhere, because right now, my biggest problem is I don't feel like it's going anywhere. I think it's just be fizzle, and by the way, Rogue One happens after the last episode.
you don't want to give me a number?
I can't give you another week till we get through.
Not even with this information.
All right, I'll say 5.
There you go.
Because 5 is, and just so you know, the way that I rate movies, 5 means if the choice is watch paint dry or watch the movie, it's a toss-up.
Yes, I remember that.
That's a 5.
I remember that. Okay, how about you, Know It All? I know that you did an episode, but you rated it or whatever.
Yeah, I honestly, right now, I think the show's about us. I think everything, the way you described it. No, the way you described it, I would say all in, I'm probably at an 8.5 out of 10 for all 6 so far we've seen. For me, the issue is not as much as it's for him. Like, that's where they're going. I know stories go, and I'm willing to go with you. I've always said give things 3 episodes, and I gave him the first 3. And the first 3, the first 3 were rough. It was very rough. I would, because for me it was rough because Cassian Andor was sidelined in his own show. That was my problem. They were setting up a lot of things, and it was very difficult he's literally, things are happening around him. He's tied up, going like this.
I got it.
Everything around him happened.
Do you know what the first 3 episodes were? It was Mad Max Fury Road.
Now, can I finish?
Yeah, sorry, but you just made me think of that.
Yeah.
Because I have thoughts. The first thing, I feel like he was a bystander in his own show. I liked actually seeing they're starting to establish more and more the how Mon Mothma is being. We're seeing more of her motivations and a lot of things that are pushing her. So there are other things like, oh, well, now we've exposed ourselves. This guy's not normally part of the rebellion, but he knows you had to move money, which could be dangerous to us. So we have to now take out this threat because he's having money issues. So you start to see a little bit more of the machinations. I get it. Do I like the first 3 episodes? No, I wish they would have done more with them. The second 3 episodes, I feel like was designed to, one, show us a key pivotal moment in terms of the Empire. I think this is the moment when they shift from just being sort of peacekeepers trying to whatever and they're a little bit tight to suddenly they're plotting something tyrannical. They are plotting the actual destruction of a planet. And now you have Dedra, whose only job is to figure out the most efficient way to get us to the end. Dude's already said he's willing to accept if it blows up, it blows up. Oh well, he makes a little face. Is like, you're like, are you serious right now? He's such a. I swear, Krennic is someone I love and hating, and I feel like so now you get to the end of this 3, and apparently they decided to spend time with Bix getting over her trauma, and all they really did was create a terrorist thing on Coruscant. So they've sort of it was sort of sloppy. Here's my prediction for where they're going. I think the next week we're going to either have established everyone starting to come together, but by the end of this, because remember, going into Rogue One, they are an organized rebellion. They have specific. They have wing groups. They have a base. We're one breath away from A New Hope, so to speak. So at the end of the day, like if I'm not mistaken, I thought I saw we're going to get Akbar in one of these weeks. He's going to be made. I bet you money that's what they do. I bet you they go to that planet, the Mon Calamar, and I bet you they show the Empire really either whatever doing something because they're going to probably need the water from that planet to cool the reactors. So I guarantee you they're going to be doing something along those lines, and Akbar and them are going to stand up because what you're going to have is the Gorman are standing up, Akbar and them people are going to start standing up to eventually, and Mon Mothma's not going to have a choice. Mon Mothma's not going to have a choice. You're going to have to officially take a stand and watch her hand and get real. Oh, yeah. I half expected them. Did you guys see stand-in Jimmy Smits, who's not Jimmy Smits?
Yeah, what the heck was that? I was like,
So he's
that was
really
like
not.
Beast from the end of Days of Future Past. I was like, what was that?
Yeah, so apparently he wasn't available, and they could not make the schedule work. But they had this character, they had to have, so they recast him, and at least they picked someone who was Spanish, which I was like, I'm like, okay, geez, we've gotten Jimmy Smits this whole time to now. This is, and someone goes, it's Ozempic Jimmy Smits. I was like, hey.
That's what you know. What my first thought was: is Jimmy Smith's like losing a lot of weight?
Right, those damn big.
No, but I feel like they're the one thing I do. They're establishing. Here's the thing. Remember, we're going to eventually get to Rogue One, regardless of anybody's feelings about Rogue One.
Yep.
I feel like they're establishing stuff we already know, which is everyone's expendable. They're establishing most of these people who were part of the building blocks are not going to get to celebrate seeing the success of their revolution, if you will. And I believe I think we're going to see Luthen's death before it's all over. And because remember, we also got to get the robot guy, K2SO or whatever.
Yeah, I knew K2 is going to be in it. So
yeah, so I feel like they are building to something. I hope that by the end of it, I'm like, oh, that was satisfying. I see, even when, again, no matter where you are, no matter how you feel about Rogue One, everyone agrees seeing that moment that I'm going to throw out just the Darth Vader fight thing, the hallway
Death
scene.
Star coming over the horizon.
But no, but seeing the ship escape Vader, the next moment is A New Hope.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. I hope that we get to the end of this and you connect up and you go, I can now watch. I'm going to watch season 1 of Andor again, but I literally will watch up to the end, and I'll probably watch Rogue One again because I'll need the next episode. And
I would say,
that'd be cool.
Let me throw this out for you as a bone to this set of movies. I wish that this was the director Krennic in Rogue One. I wish that Rogue One's director Krennic was this guy. Because this guy is scary and imposing and carries weight and authority and gravitas. Whereas director Krennic in Rogue One was a whiny little bitch. And I'm sorry to use that harsh language, but I mean, I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he really was. I mean, he was Tarkin's bitch. He was Vader's bitch. He was, he had. Yeah, it was horrible. But this Krennic is like, if I had seen this in the beginning of Rogue One instead of, the whiny guy, I think Rogue One would have been a lot better at the climax when he's confronting Jim.
Right. Yeah.
Because you'd think this is a ruthless killer, not, oh, this is some whiny guy that's doing this because he's afraid of Tarkin.
Right.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
I think I agree with that. So for me, I call it a 7.5.
Okay.
7.5 because I'm enjoying.
You're in between us.
Yeah, because what happens is that I'm enjoying looking at how the rebels are coming together. I see that I'm really delving into how crazy Saul really is. Yeah. So the part where dude, and then he's making a little mini me with Kento.
You're ready to fight.
You can breathe it in. Feel it.
Oh. He's gonna end up at the wrong end of War Gullet up there. Hey, I want to try War Gullet on you. War Gullet knows if you are lying. By the way, have you tried some of this nitrous oxide? I got it from Ye. It's really good.
Wow.
All right. Well, on that note,
I'm going to conclude that.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation of Nerdfights. This has been a know-it-all entertainment production. Replays are available on the Nerdfights channel at Nerdfighting on YouTube. Nerdfights is a part of the Salty Plus Network. On behalf of Salty Trekker, Mr. Know-It-All, and Gonzo, thanks for watching.